Hey, do you prefer to find the joy in life, or do you just want some help with that? If so, you're in the right place. So come on in and join the Joy Bunny clan. This is the My Slice of Life podcast. Hey, welcome Joy Bunnies to this week's episode of the My Slice of Life podcast with me, Sharon, your Highland host, where I'm continuing with the Let's Get Gardening theme. This week is all about sowing seeds, easy seeds to try, and no-dig gardening. It's a jam-packed episode, so grab a coffee and pull up a chair. But before I get to that, here's a real quick to-do list for you. Tell someone about the podcast, don't be greedy, share it out. Click the links in the description, go travel around the blog, the YouTube channel, the Buy Me a Coffee and the Patreon page, enjoy your travels, send me a postcard, all that sort of good stuff. Now, shall we get back to the seeds? I think we should. Let's crack on, there's quite a lot to get through. Although there's no real mystery to seed sowing, you'll find there are some techniques which work better with some types of seed more than others, and there's also a few surprisingly easy ways to get your seeds started. People make it sound really complicated. It isn't, I promise you. So the first sort of seed sowing I want to mention is broadcasting. Really simple. This is if you have maybe a big area to cover, pretty small seeds. So picture like grass seed if you're making a new lawn, or meadow flower seeds. Say you've got a patch you want to cover, with wildflowers, and you just get a handful and you're throwing them pretty much all over the place. And you're trying to be even and pretty neat, but not exactly precise. That's your broadcast sowing. That's also what you would do if you're using like a cover crop, if you've got an area of ground that you want to maybe have something growing over the winter which the frost can kill off, so you're going to be feeding the soil that way. You would just broadcast your seeds. If, on the other hand, you want to grow things like lettuce, actually the brassicas are good for this style as well, things that have quite small seeds, well, way back we were always told to use a tray that had all those individual cells and put a couple of seeds in each cell, then take out the weaker one and grow on the stronger one. And if you don't want many plants, I think that method might suit you. However, there is another way you can do it, and it uses less compost and it takes up less space. You can use a small plastic tray. You know the type that food comes in? Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Just use a pin or a needle to make a few holes in the bottom where it, cover it with your seed compost, or if you're using multi-purpose, make sure it's quite fine. That will work better. And it's a good idea usually to spray your compost with water first so it's damp. That will help the seed stick to it. So you're off to a good running start there. If you're using a pretty small tray, you probably just want one kind of seed in there, so just sprinkle it over. Now, hold it right there. Check on the packet if the seeds need to be covered with compost or not, because some of them will need light to germinate. I used to cover mine, I thought all seeds had to be covered. No, they don't. I'm actually doing an experiment this year. I'm trying to grow tobacco plants, and they don't need covered. So I'm glad I found that out before I even started. And some of them have germinated, so I'm quite excited about that to see what happens. And what often helps, whether you need to put compost on them or not, is either to put the tray in a clear plastic bag or put some cling film on the top. That helps keep the moisture in so your seeds don't dry out. But as soon as you see them germinate, take that cover off so then they can start growing themselves. Now, I use this method a lot. And the other thing that I do is I use the larger, actual seed tray. You'll know the ones I mean, the plastic rectangles with lots of holes in the bottom. But I use them because I can make 5 or 6 lines in the compost. And then I can use that and get a whole lot of veg done in one tray. I just did a couple last week. I had 3 different types of cabbage in it, a couple of types of kale in one tray, and I have done a lot of other trays like that. 5 or 6 different types of veg started in the one tray. I really like using that. And once your seeds have germinated and are large enough to handle, then you can transplant them into pots or cells depending on what you're growing. But see, if you're doing it this way, you're only growing on the seeds which have actually germinated, so you're not wasting all that cell space in the compost on pretty much defective seeds. I've done that before. Set up my cells, like we were always told, very precisely, put in 2 seeds thinking I'll take out the weaker one, and nothing germinated. So I've wasted this tray, I've wasted all that compost, I've wasted my time. So if you do it this way with a little tray, you're only growing on the seeds that have actually germinated. And let me tell you, sometimes you can do everything right, absolutely by the book, and the seeds just won't germinate. It could just be the seeds you were sold were too old. That does happen more than you think. Or they've got some other problem. So bear that in mind if you find you're having problems with specific seeds. It isn't you, it's them. So don't be worrying and panicking about it. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just do your best and it doesn't work. Now, if you're using the tray method I just described, I have 2 tips. One is label, label, label. And my second tip comes about because even though I labelled my trays, the labels weren't very good. I put them outside and they got washed clean by the rain. So tip number 2, take a photograph of your trays so that if yours do get wiped clean, you'll have a visual record of what you've sown. Just do something to make each tray slightly different so you'll know which one is which. Now luckily, I'd taken photos of 2 out of my 3 trays, so I was able to figure out what I had for them, and I'm pretty sure the other one is lettuce, going by the shape of the leaves. I'm pretty sure it is, but I'll know better once they get a little bigger. I don't know what type of lettuce it would be. I can't remember what I put in, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It doesn't really matter to me what kind of lettuce, it's all good. Right, I mentioned earlier the trays with the cells. You know, the ones with little compartments, and these are really, really handy for the next type of seed sowing, which is multi-sowing. And I don't know why, but I've only started doing this in the last 3 years maybe. Didn't even think about it before that. So instead of putting 1 or 2 seeds in each cell, you're putting in quite a few. And now the plants will grow together in a little family, right? And you just plant them out as they are, in that little clump. All you have to do is, like when you're doing that, you push the cell gently from underneath while you're holding the leaves, not the stems, and you put a little cube in the ground. That's it. As the plants grow and they get bigger, you can actually harvest 1 or 2 from that when they're quite small. Not tiny, but you get decent size. But that leaves the other ones room to get big, and you're still getting a harvest even by picking the small ones. And what you'll find is they will grow and they push each other apart. So don't be panicking. You know how all too often on the seed packets it's very precise. They must be 15 centimetres apart, or they must be 6 inches apart. Not always, no. A lot of them seem to grow better right beside the wee buddies, and they like that. This method actually works really well with things like onions, spring onions or scallions, beetroot and leeks, really good for them. You can also try putting peas in. If you put in like 5 seeds in each cell, if you're just wanting the shoots, or try 3 seeds per cell if you want to grow them for pods. That works really well as well. Turnips can also be multi-sown, apparently up to 5 seeds per cell. For things like basil, try 3 to 4 seeds, and chard, try around 3. So there you go, try that and see how you get on. This method saves you a lot of compost, it saves you time, and you get more to harvest in the same size of space. So like instead of 1 beetroot, you're going to get maybe 5 or 6. It's a really, really good use of space and your seeds. If you put 6 in and 4 germinate, you still win and you still get more harvest for that space. So I love multi-sowing. I'm all for it. The next type of seed sowing I want to highlight is for larger seeds like squash and courgettes or zucchini, again depending on where you're from, the large bulky seeds that you get. Now some people like to make a little nick in the outer coating to help the water get in, and this can work. But what also helps is to dampen like a piece of kitchen paper, kitchen roll, put the seeds in it, wrap them up and pop that in a little plastic bag and put them somewhere nice and warm and dark. But keep checking them, and what you'll discover is very quickly you'll get these lovely white roots appearing, and when that happens you take your little seed, carefully plop it into your little pot of compost, cover it over, and it'll grow on quite happily. And this way you're only actually sowing the seeds that are actually viable. Again, you're not wasting your time on ones that won't germinate. And like I said, you'll soon find there are some seeds, no matter what you do, they won't germinate. So this is another really good method. It just lets you see, okay, I can use that one's done. So what about some easy seeds to get you started? Now you might do a lot of gardening already, but sometimes it's really easy to forget the simple things, isn't it? And we get so used to growing a particular thing, so it never crosses our mind to try something else. So stick with me. Don't skip this bit. Stick with me. You never know. You might pick something up. That's what I like about gardening. We always learn from each other, don't we? I like that. And before I go any further, I must apologise. I think I have a little touch of hay fever today. I've been out in the garden digging a trench round the polytunnel I've been making. If you follow the blog and the YouTube channel, you will see that soon. It's not quite finished, but I've been out there a while, and we have a lilac and it seems to affect all of us, so I need to get my remedy out and start taking that, but I'll soldier on best I can. Everyone says start with radish, right? And they do grow really well, but think about it. Do you actually like them? Will you eat them? Because I've never known anyone who had to run to the shops because they'd run out of radishes. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do them, go for it. They do tend to germinate pretty well, and they do grow fast. I'll give you a laugh. I gave a planter box trough thing to Ardira's son. I said, would you like to grow some of your own stuff in the garden? Because, I mean, we have the allotment, but I do salads mainly in the garden because they need more watering and keep an eye on it better. He says, yeah. And I says, right, what do you want? I took out the seeds. He went, oh, I'll do some of the radishes. And I thought, okay, because I knew what was coming. Grew his radish. Tried the first one the other day. I says, come and see this. I says, look. I says, you've got something to harvest. And he was so excited. Now, he's been gardening since he was 2. He took out the radish. I said, just wipe it, give it up. Don't worry about washing it. Just wipe the soil off, it'll be fine. He pulled the roots off and he bit into it. Oh, he was all excited, bit into it. And he was chewing it. I thought, okay. The face was giving nothing away. And eventually he went, that is one of the most disgusting things I have ever eaten. He says, you can keep them. I don't want them. They're horrible. Who grows them? Well, he did. So bear that in mind. Things that we will eat, however, I found little gem lettuce has worked really well for us so far this year. Most of the beetroot seems to be doing really well too, so that's good. Depending on your space, don't forget potatoes. They are so easy to grow, and if you only grow early varieties, you're probably less likely to get blight too. And even if you only put 1 or 2 in a bag, you're going to get a harvest. I love growing potatoes. I mean, our potatoes are starting to show now in the plot, and it's always exciting. This might sound sad, but we've been growing them for 12 years now, and I still get excited at the thought of harvesting them. I really do. It's just like a wee treasure hunt. And again, I'm going to say it, they taste so much better than the ones you buy in the shop. They really, really do. You can tell the difference. And the other thing as well, see when you grow your own, if you look through the catalogue, there are loads of varieties of potatoes. You go in the shop, you might get 2 or 3 to choose from, you know. You grow your own, you can taste so many different kinds of potatoes, and you'll be thinking, oh, this is what I've been missing. You can actually grow potatoes that you have at home already. You know, if they've got sprouts, you can just stick them in. I've done an experiment this year using some of our own kept potatoes from last year just to see what happens. Seed potatoes are expensive. They're getting more expensive. So if you have some that start to sprout, why not try growing them? I'm actually trying sweet potatoes for the first time this year. I didn't buy slips. I found, God, see me on YouTube, honestly. I should be banned from even flicking through that thing. I found another short on YouTube where the guy showed what to do with actual potatoes, so I'm trying that to see if it'll stick shoots up that I can then apparently put in a pot. I don't know if I'm too late for it this year, but I'm doing it anyway. What can I say? I'm a rule breaker. I just, you got to do what feels right, haven't you? Besides, I had it sitting in a bag. I didn't want it to go to waste, so I thought, I'll see if I can grow it. Who knows? Other super easy seeds for you to grow and look after are things like courgette and pumpkin. They can't wait to get bigger. Now, just a wee word of caution here, if you are prone to having slugs and snails in your area, because they love these plants. I have put out, I think it was last year, I wrote about it on the blog because I did a big experiment last year which did not work. I'll just say it straight off, it did not work. I've mentioned it in a previous episode. I tried all these different mulches, and apparently I tried all the ones that seemed to help slugs and snails breed like crazy, and they were everywhere. And my courgette plants were literally disappearing overnight. I think I had to plant 3 pumpkins to get a decent sized one, and there was other squashes I had all over the place, and they just disappeared. So I'm doing it different this year. But what you can do, and this is what I'm going to be doing this year, if you got one of those, the gallon plastic water bottles, you make a cloche from one of them to protect your little plant while it's still young, and in that really vulnerable stage. Once they get big, the leaves are tough, and they're not so enticing to these creatures. I'm trying real hard. I went up to the plot the other night, actually. It's quite late, about 10 o'clock at night, just to give the carrots a quick water. It's another experiment. We'll talk about that another day. I have a feeling it's not going to work because I'm not watering them enough. But anyway, 10 o'clock, went up to do the watering, and there were snails everywhere. It was like a scene out of a horror film. So I will be doing this. Get your gallon plastic water bottle. Just cut the bottom off it, place it over your plant. Instant cloche. Snails can't get in. And what you can do, you can take the lid and leave the lid off during the day for better air circulation. It's like a mini greenhouse, and it works. It does. I've done it before, but I didn't have enough to do it last year. Long story, doesn't matter, but they work. Doing that will work for so many plants, especially, you're doing little individual ones like your courgettes or zucchini, your squash plants and your pumpkins. Just these little cloches will protect them while they are growing. When they get big enough, you can take it off and they should be fine after that. So save your water bottles. They're fantastic. Don't throw them out. Use them in the garden. Oh, and another thing, if you want to grow tomatoes, try this really easy method. I've done this and it worked. Get an organic tomato, preferably organic. Slice it. Make sure the slice that you've got has got lots of seeds in it. And just lay that flat on the compost in a pot. Add a little layer of compost on the top. Give it a watering. And wait. Don't let it dry out. But soon, really soon actually, you'll see lots of baby tomato leaves sprouting all over the place. All you've got to do then is gently ease them out one by one and put them into individual pots. It's super easy. And I tell you, I find using an old pencil to just lift the roots while I hold on to the leaves. Always hold on to the leaves of your seedlings, not the stems. This works a treat. You don't need expensive equipment in the garden. Just remember this one thing if you remember nothing else. The best garden tools you have are your own two hands. They really are. My hands are an absolute state, but boy do they work. So remember, you do not need to spend a fortune for anything in gardening. It's a myth, another myth. So whatever method you're using for all your seeds, bear in mind, not too dry, not too wet. Keep them warm, not too hot. See if they need light, or should they be covered with compost for germination. Another handy tip I have for you, by the way, is concerning heat mats. Again, another expensive piece of kit, but often told we need. I don't have any. Have you seen the price of them? No, I do not have any. So I tried something else this year. Again, it's an experiment, and it worked, right? What you can use instead is just hot water bottles. And you know those little hand warmer things? You know the ones that got the metal bit inside them and you click it and it kind of goes solid and heats up? Use them. They're reusable, obviously the hot water bottles are, and it works a treat. I think I put it under some when it was actually still too hot, the hot water bottle. So, like I was saying, not too hot. That's obviously how I found that one out. I don't know why more people don't use them. I've seen people go to crazy lengths to create heat to get their seedlings to germinate. And this year I have just been putting my trays on top of hot water bottles and hand warmers, and it's worked an absolute treat. The other thing I wanted to go through with you today, just briefly though, is what we in the UK call no-dig gardening. In the US, I think you call it no-till. I'm not sure what other areas call it, probably one or the other. I don't think there's that many other names for it. My go-to guy for all things no-dig is Charles Dowding. That's Dowding. He has a great website. YouTube channel is fantastic. There's so much information there. He writes books, even produces a calendar all about no-dig gardening. I mean, he does talks and all sorts of things. So if you don't know what I'm talking about here with all this no-dig, I'll give you a brief explanation. In basic terms, no-dig, pretty much as it sounds though, is when you leave the soil as undisturbed as possible and you feed the microbes within it. Now, you might be asking how you do that, but it's actually really, really simple, and I wish I had discovered this many years ago. If you want to grow organically as well, this is a brilliant method for you. So imagine you've got an area of land that you want to grow in. Maybe you already do, don't know. But maybe it's got grass in it or weeds on it and you don't really fancy digging it all over to get it ready. You know, it's kind of, you've been putting it off because you think, looks like a lot of hard work. That would be a lot of hard work. So what you can do instead, cover that area with cardboard. Now, don't do what I did. I did one layer. You want a few layers because it decomposes quickly. That cardboard is going to deprive your weeds and grass of light and it's going to weaken them and eventually they'll die off. That's simple. Perennial weeds will eventually die off, but some can take a year or more. So you might need to get a small hand tool just to ease the roots out best you can. Now, you've got your cardboard. On top of that, you're going to put a thick layer of compost and that's it. That's it. Every year after that, you just apply a layer of compost on the top, and that is what feeds the microbes. You don't need to dig it in because the worms, the wee bugs, they're going to do all that work for you. Now, apart from saving your back, if you don't dig the soil, you're not disturbing the soil structure, because if you imagine it's full of all these wee air tunnels and pockets, and when you dig that, you collapse all of them. That's when the soil becomes compacted. Too much digging compacts your soil. And another thing you don't want to do actually is bring dormant weeds to the surface, and that's exactly what you do when you're digging. If you've ever seen ground after it's been rotivated, you might have seen this. Rotivators seem to churn everything up and bring every weed seed to the surface. So you'll spend ages rotivating it, you'll go back a week and you'll be like, because it's covered in weeds. That's why. There are also really beneficial microbes and bacteria in the soil, but digging just messes them up. The healthiest and most active part of your soil is pretty near the surface. I mean, subsoil is called sub for a reason, and not just because it's below. It's below everything. It's below in level, it's below in quality. Most of the active stuff and all the healthy parts, think the length of a spade, that's pretty much your most active part. So if we just add compost on top, we can leave the good guys to do all the hard work for us. All we have to do is some light hoeing of annual weeds, although you'll find eventually you get less and less weeds with no dig too, so the weeding can be done much quicker. In fact, I'm finding this year we've mainly got annual weeds now. I've got a few things like couch grass. I've still got some couch grass. I've become an expert at growing thistles, sadly, but I am finding it isn't taking me as long to deal with this stuff anymore. They don't get a good hold in the compost because I'm putting, if you think about that top layer is like loose compost, they can't get a good grip on that. So they're really easy to pull out or hoe out. So there's another good reason to go no dig. And if you do want to know more about no dig and the more kind of scientific explanations behind it all, I really suggest you go to Charles Dowding's website. He's been growing like this for a long time now. And he's been doing lots of comparison trials where he digs one bed but not the other. And to be honest with you, the results really speak for themselves. He's also got online courses too. So if you want to take your learning about gardening to a whole new level, there's something else to think about. I haven't done any yet. He has so much information on there for free, I haven't done a course. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is probably only our second year doing full no dig. I mean, I was kind of trying it on a bay here and a bay there, but I thought, no, the whole plot's got to be done. And it does seem to be getting easier. I think the first year you'll still see weeds coming up and you think, oh, it's not working. No, keep going, because our second year, I mean, I used to spend hours weeding the plot, but I can get a lot more done now in about half the time. So do keep going with it. Here, I'll give you a laugh, right? When I first heard about no dig, I didn't quite get all the information. I'm prone to that, but, I get that excited, I just go off. So I ran off, I got a whole load of cardboard, put it all over the place, but that was it. I didn't realise I was supposed to put compost on top of it, so it just rotted and I was back to square one. Yeah, you live and learn. You live and learn, don't you? But you can learn through my mistakes. Don't be doing that. Oh, and by the way, the cardboard is only really needed in the first year because after that you're just adding a layer of compost on the top. And again, after the first year, you aren't really putting on a very thick layer of compost either, and it still seems to work. So I'm sticking with it. It's working for me, so I just wanted to bring that to you today. So hopefully I can encourage some of you to become no dig if you're not already. So I hope all of that has given you plenty to think about this week, whether you're a dab hand in the garden or you're pretty new to it. I mean, I'm no expert by any stretch, so all I can tell you is what I do here and hope you get something from it. But I still find gardening is one of the most exciting, challenging and rewarding things you can do with your time. Which is lucky because 1, I'm heading off back to the garden now to do a bit more of this trench, and 2, I'll be back next week with another episode to encourage all of us to get and keep gardening. But until then, you take care of your wee self.